No one forced Israel to drop 2,000-pound bombs on crowded refugee places. No one forced Israel to bomb hospitals. No one forced Israel to sniper shoot children.
Hamas don't want a state. They want there not to be a Jewish state.
Which soldier?
I know they have been.
Which soldier was prosecuted for dropping a grenade on a child?
There are dozens
of
them
on national TV. Piers Morgan can come back on the next episode and tell everyone that you're not telling the truth.
Benjamin Netanyahu ended his major US trip without achieving Trump's main objective for arranging it. That was ending the war in Gaza. As the Israeli Prime Minister boarded his flight back to Israel, the New York Times published a damning and detailed investigation into the extraordinary extent to which the war has been prolonged for his political benefit. Israel's spokesmen, ministers and supporters repeatedly tell me on this show that the likes of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, cabinet members whose language on the Palestinian people is overtly genocidal, are not relevant. They're not in the war cabinet, they say. They're not influential. But the many revelations the New York Times is reporting include the detail that Smotrich derailed a proposal to end the war and return all Israeli hostages as far back as April 2024, and that Ben-Gvir intervened to sabotage a deal to further normalize relations with Saudi Arabia because it was contingent on getting out of Gaza. It paints a grim picture of a power-crazed prime minister who made a Faustian pact with fanatics to defer justice in his own corruption trial.
The magnesium in your cabinet is not only filled with heavy metals, but it also can be making your age faster. And I'm about...
Tens of thousands more Palestinians and several Israeli hostages have died as a result. Just yesterday, at least 10 people, including 6 children, were killed by an Israeli airstrike as they queued for water. The IDF said it made a technical error. Well, in a moment, to debate all this, founder and editor-in-chief of Zateo News, Mehdi Hasan, and the author of The Preventive State, The Challenge of Preventing Serious Harms While Preserving Essential Liberties, the attorney Alan Dershowitz. But first, let's talk to investigative journalists and producers of Oscar-nominated documentary The Bibi Files. That's Raviv Drucker and Alex Gibney. Well, welcome to both of you. It's quite a shocking revelation for me, a lot of the stuff in the New York Times report, but probably not to you guys, because you're arguably the world authorities on Bibi Netanyahu and the reality behind the man, the prime minister, and what has been going on in Israel in the last 2 decades. So let me just start with what your thoughts are about him right now. The New York Times, and I'll start with you, Ravi, if I may. The New York Times makes it pretty crystal clear that Netanyahu has been held ransom for power by Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, these far-right guys on the government there, and that there's no incentive for him to end the warfare, because actually the moment he does, accountability starts, both for the mistakes that were made on October the 7th, but also on a personal level, he's got the corruption charges and so on. I mean, from your understanding of Netanyahu, how accurate is all this?
Look, the New York Times story was not something new to the Israeli public. Most of the Israeli public completely aware of the fact that Netanyahu, his first right motivation is political one, and to survive. And in order to survive, he needs those guys, and he needs those base of ultra-right voters to support him all the time. And this goes by prolong the war in Gaza. And the second argument is that Netanyahu, in the beginning of the war, didn't took any measures to the day after. Who will govern Gaza instead of Hamas? According to Netanyahu, he did nothing. He told us all the time, first we need to win the war and then we will take care of it. So guess what? Now we are supposed to be in the day after, but there is no one to govern Gaza. So now he tells us, what do you want me to do? To withdraw from Gaza and keep the Hamas there? So now we have 2 very bad options, and those 2 bad options leading to the survival of Netanyahu.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Gibney, you know, I watched the Bibi Files, and I think I'm in it actually at one stage for an interview I did with Netanyahu actually for CNN when I went to Jerusalem. And what was clear to me from that interview, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that back. It was another bit of, I'm sorry, let me correct that, chaps, I'm sorry. I got it confused with something else. Alex Gibney, let me just broaden this to where we think we are with this war in Gaza. a lot of reports suggesting there is going to be a ceasefire. It didn't happen during Netanyahu's trip to see President Trump, but people are anticipating there will be a ceasefire. It will involve the release of many of the remaining hostages, and it will involve the release of many Palestinian prisoners. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who controls the Gaza Strip after all this. It seems to me, when you listen to Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, that these guys have a plan to get rid of all Palestinians, in their eyes, to cleanse the Gaza Strip of Palestinians. Do you think that is the objective now?
It seems like. I don't know. I can only go by what they're saying. That is to say, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. But I think, just to echo what Raviv said a moment ago, I think the most appalling thing here is that you have a man, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been pursuing policies purely for his mostly for his political survival, and as such has never given any thought to an end game. And now the end game is being pursued by people who have a very vicious end game in mind, which is to say the elimination or the eradication from Israeli territory of the Palestinian people. So that's a serious, serious, serious issue.
Yeah, and Raviv, who can stop Netanyahu now? Can Donald Trump, even if he wanted to, stop Netanyahu? Is there anybody internally? I interviewed Naftali Bennett last week. It's clear that he's beginning to flex his muscles about a potential run against him. But according to the latest polls, it is more likely than not that if his Likud party, Netanyahu's party, was to stand in an election now, it would probably be successful and he wouldn't be reliant on Ben-Gvir and Smotrich anymore for power. Is that your assessment? And if that is true, then where does that leave us?
My mom hadn't been able to see her grandson's face for 5 years until she discovered a simple, at-home solution that changed everything.
First of all, according to the polls in the last year and a half since the war broke, Netanyahu cannot govern again and cannot re-elect. It's only polls, but this is what the polls shows. He lost 14 seats according to the polls, 15 seats. Who can stop him? Of course, President Trump can stop him, but we saw in the war with Iran, Netanyahu knows how to play Trump. And he can even function and operate when Trump says no, or weak no, or orange light, or all kinds of things like that. So Netanyahu is very clever in understanding Trump, in understanding how Trump operates, how much patience he has to topics. But above all, what's going on right now is that to Israel, there is a strategic damage that it will take us years, maybe decades, to fix. What happens now in Gaza will taint our name, our image, our personas as human beings for years to come, maybe more than this.
And Alex, one of my big bugbears about this has been the refusal to allow international journalists to go into Gaza to verify the endless horrific stories which are coming out. And there seems to be a familiar pattern, particularly in relation in the last few months to the number of people being shot who are lining up for food. And we're now over, I think, 500-600 civilians have been killed in this way. And the explanation given by the IDF varies from we'll launch an inquiry to we were firing warning shots to somebody made a threatening move and so on. But some of the footage I've seen on social media looks very clearly as if the Palestinians who are queuing for food are getting deliberately shot at.
Well, look, I mean, the fact that no independent journalists are being permitted into Gaza, with some rare exceptions for sort of embeds, which are very heavily controlled, is a disgrace. And I think it goes to a kind of a playbook that has been followed in the case of Gaza, which is to try to control the narrative. They're not doing a very good job internationally because I think the whole world is horrified at what's going on. But they don't get much credibility when they say, well, you know, Hamas is controlling the narrative when they're not letting anybody else in. The whole point, I mean, Netanyahu's obsession is to control or manage the media. But this has gone way beyond that into a kind of an authoritarian playbook, which is, I think, appalling to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and Ravid, do you think that when journalists finally get in there, that the world is going to be very shocked by what they uncover about the reality of what has happened in Gaza?